Wow, we already got 29 people in. That's pretty good.
Great.
All right, folks who dialing in, how you doing? Happy Tuesday. The fact I had to stop and think about that is terrifying. Yeah. That sums up my life right now. What also sums up my life is this massive venti caramel macchiato from Starbucks.
You can still get coffee. Wow.
Drive through.
Okay.
Drive through. Yeah, through the drive through, you can still get coffee. Thank God. Hey, everybody who's joined, thank you. Wow, 44 people already and more flying in. This one should be fun, everybody. What is jobs to be done? Man, good God, guys, you're already asking questions? I haven't even started yet. Ryan, you're screwed. You're screwed. It's going to be one of those days, man. One of those days. Everybody, thanks. Grab a coffee. We're going to get going here in a minute. Smack the like button or the clap button or the heart button or God knows what. Just start hitting stuff. This is going to be the equivalent of a Schoolhouse Rocks type episode. We're going to drop some knowledge on you. I am wearing a Schoolhouse Rocks. I don't know if you guys can see this t-shirt. Awesome. So I am set up for this occasion, everybody. You got questions? Pop them in there. All right. Ask the questions. If we don't get to them during the show, we'll get to them after. Answer the questions. Hell, in the comments section, because people already are. Somebody asked, what's JTBD? And like half of you already said, jobs to be done, man. So well done. With that, because we're going to be tight on time, Ryan, I'm going to actually start on time. Okay. So let's dive in. Good morning. It's Tuesday. Welcome to the 10th episode of Fintech Insiders, the Breakfast Show US. This is a show from the folks at 11FS, bringing you interesting insights into the fintech and banking landscape. I am 2 of these in right now. I am so wired. I can't stand myself right now. I am Sam All, 11FS Managing Director, North America. I'm your host for the morning show here. The idea is, for those that haven't been through one of this, we're all cooped up, we're all self-isolating, we all are going absolutely batshit crazy. So if we're going to be batshit crazy, let's learn something and let's keep the sense of community going. So with that, today I am joined by the 11FS very own guru. I like that. Definitely a guru. Ryan Garner. He's the head of our product and jobs to be done lead. We're going to talk about our approach to jobs to be done, the impact of COVID on small businesses, how you apply this in when you're working on product design and everything else. This is going to be good. But first, Ryan, where are you in the world?
I'm currently in the UK. I'm in Tunbridge Wells, not London. Commute into London usually, but I'm in a place called Tunbridge Wells. It's just outside in the southeast of the UK.
What train do you take into London?
It's just a commuter train, Southeastern, for anybody that's listening and catches that train. There we go, Southeastern train into London.
A shout out to Southeastern train. David Garabino, do not comment on my coffee. I live in Jacksonville, Florida. What coffee do you want me to get, dude? David lives in New York, right? He can get the greatest coffee in the world. I live in Jacksonville. It's this, McDonald's or Dunkin'. That's my choices. Don't judge me. That's what I get stuck with.
There's only a few coffee shops around here serving coffee. It's not great.
It doesn't matter. I couldn't exist without this. All right, let's start with the basics, okay? And we will tie into what Bruce Springsteen has to do with jobs. Don't worry, everybody. I put that teaser out. So, Ryan, for the layman person, how would you describe jobs to be done? What is this? What are we talking about?
Jobs to be done is a process or a framework that we use to identify opportunity spaces or growth opportunities in the market. And obviously, because we're at 11FS, we're doing that in the financial services markets. And so any business that's looking for any new kind of growth outside of their core business, Jobs to be done is a great tool to use to identify those opportunities. And it's just a different way of thinking about the customer, their motivations and their outcomes, and how we can build businesses around that, or propositions around that.
And if you're in technology, if you're anything around product or anything like that, good Lord, Clayton Christensen, right? Let's go ahead and do our morning salute. Hey, Clayton. Well done. So so much of this ties back to him, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's the founder of Jobs to Be Done, really. So off the back of the Innovator's Dilemma, he then kind of published the Innovator's Solution, and in that he was providing solutions to the Innovator's Dilemma, and one of those solutions was jobs to be done. And how can big corporations defend against those kind of plucky upstarts eating their lunch? Well, refocus on what your customer outcomes are, rather than just thinking about what your product can do, and kind of technology trends, really, which is kind of where businesses were at the start of the decade, or even the start of the century.
Yeah, it was it was sad when he passed. So Clayton Christensen, for those that don't know,
really sad.
Passed. I think January, if I remember right. 2020 got off to so 2020 got off to a shit start, as most of you are aware, and it's gotten so much better. But losing Clayton Christensen, that definitely hurt as a person. I'm gonna get away from jobs to be done in theory and everything else. Just as a person, he was inspiring. Some of the things he wrote about reflecting on his life and everything else. When this is done, I'm gonna put a couple links out, because he was an amazing person to learn from.
Yeah, it's a great TED talk on there, isn't it, about him reflecting on his life, and he reflects a little bit on kind of some of his business theories and how they've helped him kind of find meaning in life. They're definitely worth a watch. So
if we can give an example around jobs to be done, and then we will dive in, all right, a couple theories. There's multiple examples of this. There's a very famous one around the Milkshake Theory, right? What milkshakes do on cutting your lawn or getting your grass cut and stuff like that. But the basic concept is customers don't buy products. They hire products to fulfill a specific job in their lives. I did just read that verbatim, everybody. Ryan's the expert, not me. Did I get that right, Ryan?
Yeah, you got it. You got it. And the classic example is the milkshake one. And that came from Clayton Christensen working with McDonald's and trying to think about how they can sell more of their milkshakes. And it wasn't necessarily about the milkshake, it was about the use case of that milkshake. And they found that in the mornings that people were buying these milkshakes on their way to work for a kind of to feel full at breakfast, but also a nice convenient thing to kind of hold in the car whilst they were driving. And also they didn't, something that didn't kind of get consumed within 5 minutes. It actually lasted the journey. So they were being hired for a specific purpose, and then that helped McDonald's kind of sell more milkshakes and reposition their milkshakes. Another great example is Snickers bars. And Snickers bars typically, or people think they compete with Milky Ways because they're very similar chocolate bars. But actually, if you couldn't buy a Snickers bar, you'd probably buy a Red Bull or a Big Mac or a protein bar, because you're eating a Snickers bar because you want to feel full or fit, or you want a bit of energy. Whereas a Milky Way, you'd probably buy a chocolate fondant or a luxury cake or a glass of wine or something. They're serving two different purposes. So Jobs to be Done kind of came out of that kind of CPG world, but has since infiltrated technology sectors, fintech sectors, financial sectors. And we're using it heavily to identify new opportunity spaces by just looking at the problem in a completely different way.
How did you get into this, Ryan? I just got to ask, because I will flat out tell everybody who's on here, I've worked with Ryan now for 2 years at least at 11FS. I've been doing product design. I've been involved in the industry for a long time. I was a product manager back when I was at TSYS. I've done this, forever and a day. And when you read about, and there's the methodology, or here's the approach, everybody is like, yeah, okay, this is consultants doing spin, right? And the very first time I sat through this process with Ryan and a team was about 2 years ago for a retail digital bank we were building for a bank. And I want to say in 2 weeks, I was blown away by the process. I'll just flat out say that. And Ryan is, I'm going to hype you up, easily one of the top 20 people in this space, in my opinion, globally on this topic. So how'd you get into this, Ryan?
So for me, I was working a lot with technology companies, consumer product kind of technology companies. So the likes of Nokia and RIM when they were a thing, and kind of Vodafone and Google and a variety of different HTC, a variety of different companies back in the day. And I was working with a lot of product teams. And what I found was that doing research, customer research, and giving that to product teams was a bit of a tricky task. There was always a bit of a translation issue. Like, what does this mean when you say kind of make this simpler or more convenient? What does this mean when you say help customers feel in control? There's a piece missing from that jigsaw, and I felt that a lot of product teams weren't using customer research, really good customer research, effectively, because they didn't have the research skills, or that the research was just too flaky and just too abstract. And so you needed almost this translation tool between really good research and really good researchers and really, really good product managers. And that translation tool happened to be Jobs to be Done, because Jobs to be Done just reframes the customer problem in a really, really straightforward way that product people resonate with and can pick up and use. And we've been using this now, or I've been using this now for 5-6 years, and I've used it at a startup as well to help pivot a startup. And it's been super effective, not only in its outcomes, that it's enabled that growth that we've been looking for, but just in working in cross-functional, interdisciplinary teams, and helping create a language that everyone understands, that enables the company to be kind of customer focused.
So for those that are watching the comments, thanks for the comments, folks. I'm going to ask two things of you. One, if you and your teams, if you and your company use Jobs to be Done, can you give it a little shout out in the comments section? Don't forget to hit the like, share button, go crazy. But then also, I really need you to stump Ryan. Okay. So for those of you that are product designers that have been in this and have done the customer interviews, please, for the love of God, help me stump Ryan Garner. That would just make my day if I can make him just go. Ryan, for those of us that are new, or don't really understand the Jobs to be Done concept, and I don't want to go out and read a million different consulting decks, what's a good book? What's a good reference source? Other than, and after this, I'm going to post a link to Ryan's video on YouTube for us that walks through this. So Ryan, you're getting a shout out there. And also some of the material we did. What book would you recommend? Where would you start?
So Clayton Christensen is a great starting point, and competing against luck is one of the great books that will intro you into it. It's a bit more of a developed idea from the Innovator Solution, where it's a bit kind of flaky or just a bit early in his thinking. The other one is When Coffee and Kale Compete by Alan Clement. Those two books, it really, really kind of enabled me to work with Jobs to be Done in the way that I do today.
When Coffee and Kale Compete. I know you've told me this like 8 times over the past couple of years. And I'd get to go buy that book. Correct me if I'm wrong, you've spoken with the author of that before, or you know that person, right?
Yeah, we've got to know each other over the past couple of years. We share ideas, and he's a really open and smart and interesting guy. So he's usually open to people reaching out to him. So I definitely recommend it. It's always a good chat. There's a video of Alan and I on YouTube as well somewhere, just chatting about product research and Jobs to be Done.
So, well, like I said, after this, I'll put out as many links as I can around this. For those that are wondering what in the hell is going on in the video where they see this little pencil keep showing up, this is to keep Sam from touching his face, which for some reason I love to touch my face. So this is my self-control. We could do a Jobs to be Done on me, Ryan. Why this?
Let's not go. I don't want to sink into that rabbit hole.
Yeah. I can tell you why it's a pencil, because one of the early shows I did a pen and I went right across my face. Ooh, a question. David Breyer. Of course, David would do this. Ryan, you develop products now in the UK, Africa, US, and China. What has been the learning most at odds with your own frame of reference? Good question.
Wow, he's really trying to stump me. So I think the biggest kind of realization that I've had since actually working at 11FS and doing this in, as David mentioned, lots of different parts of the world, is that Jobs to be Done is not enough. And it's a great starting point, and it gets you kind of most of the way there. It enables you to identify that opportunity space, but you kind of need to go a little bit deeper. If you're in Hong Kong or Singapore or Ghana or different parts of the world that are completely different to what you know, you need to kind of dig deeper into kind of those cultural trends. You need to embed those jobs to be done within the situation, the language, the culture, the environment, the context within which you're working. Effectively, context is everything. And when we start talking about Springsteen and the research we've been doing in the US, that played a big part in helping us understand where that opportunity space is there.
Yeah, now Ryan, you've lived this, so you know it, but I'll speak for some of the other folks at 11FS. So we've, again, 11FS, we're based out of London, but we in offices here in the US, but we do work all over the globe. So we have helped banks design digital banking products and even digital banks, for example, in Asia, in Hong Kong and Singapore, like Ryan said, in Ghana and Africa and across the globe. So it's interesting that you're able to use this methodology when you don't even speak the language, like the work we're doing in the Middle East right now, when I think about that. That's a slight challenge, though, is it not?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. But that's where, I mean, we would never work by ourselves anyway. We would always work with a team in the local area. And so what we realize is that part of our job is delivering the work, but part of our job is upskilling the team as well. And so the team on the ground that we're working with will naturally speak the local language. And so giving them some coaching on how to do good interviews, what kind of questions to ask, where to probe, how to deconstruct that interview and make sense of that interview to create those insights that we need is part of the process. And if we didn't do that, we wouldn't be building strong teams and creating the culture within which that thinking, that mentality, that customer centricity doesn't live on and continue. And so it's a very, very important part of what we do. And it enables us to work across lots of different regions and quickly become accustomed with the way people live and work there.
So a really good question from Sidrahar, who asked a really good question on every damn show now. Can you provide a good example where jobs to be done methodology delivered great results, whereas another approach wouldn't have yielded the same? That's a fair question.
Yeah, it's a good question. And you can never truly answer that question, I don't think, because if you take route A instead of route B, you never know what route B is would have kind of given you. So it's never really a fair like for like kind of comparison. But I think with I think if you look at just some of the case studies out there of where jobs to be done has been successful, you'll see a lot of success stories. Some of jobs to be done is based on finding new opportunities and new opportunity areas, which is where a large part of our research is. And so that normally takes quite a long time for it to kind of bear any fruit, as it were, or to see some of the results come through. The other one that's quicker is using jobs to be done in a more of a go-to-market strategy. So how do you adapt a proposition that you created in one market, take it to another market, and set it slightly differently to tap into the nuances of the market there, and you can see results much quicker with that one.
Yeah, good question by, again, going to slaughter your name, so I'm sorry, Miriam El Kafla. There's no way I didn't slaughter that, and I apologize. But good question. At what stage of the project does the jobs to be done framework be applied? That's a really good question. We have this thing we call a 12-weeker and an 8-weeker that we do at 11FS all the time. So do you want to touch on that, Ryan? At what stage of a project would you normally look to get this up and going?
Yeah, well, right at the start, really. I mean, we kick off a lot of different work streams at the start, but jobs to be done is one of them. And yeah, I mean, it's the first thing we want to be focusing on, really. We want to be understanding and speaking the customer's language. We want to be understanding the outcomes that customers are trying to make progress on, and what's holding them back, and what's blocking them from kind of making that change in their lives. And yeah, so kind of right at the start. But the important thing is that it doesn't just end once you've completed the research. The important thing is that you continually learn and update your understanding of those jobs to be done. Because just like when you design a product without getting it into market, you don't fully know if that product is going to resonate with customers until you get it into customers' hands. Just like research, you will learn more and more the more you test with customers, and that job's to be done understanding the constraints they have, the outcomes they're looking for, should be continually updated as you go along. So it shouldn't just end at the start of your project.
Great segue, talking about ending, right? Again, God, I'm horrible at names. Sweeney, and I know you were, excuse me, Sweeney dials into these a million times. Good question. Some products are a hit, some products are a fail. When do you decide to pull the plug? And can you share some insights of what you learned from product failures? So in other words, doing all the upfront work with jobs to be done and the customer interviews we do, take the 11FS approach. When do we tell our clients, you don't want to go there? This is the wrong path. Because actually in consulting, that's a big deal, right? Is to be able to step up and say, honestly, our recommendation, don't do it.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I've had that at 11FS yet. There are kind of like moments where you need to pivot slightly and you need to change something because what you assumed at the start was actually not the biggest concern for customers. Actually, this other thing that you've designed was. And so what you find, or what I find more often, is that people use your product in a different way to how you anticipated it. And so that then has to be reflected in how you position that product in your product marketing, and how you think about prioritizing future features that come in from the roadmap. And so I would say they're more kind of like pivots or small pivots than they are kind of major rethinks of a product.
Oh, here's a good question. Again, play a game. How bad does Sam slaughter names? Guantanamo. Does jobs to be done work better in startups versus incumbents? What environment is necessary to successfully adopt the framework in organizations? So say like very large banks. That's a very fair question.
It is. I would say it doesn't really matter what size the organization is. I'd say one of the key ingredients to success, though, is having this interdisciplinary team. One of the things that doesn't work well is if researchers just go away and do the research. They create this framework and then hand it over to the product team, who then have to go and design the product, and then hand it over to the marketing team, who then have to go and sell it. Because then the marketers go, well, what are we selling? Why are we doing this? And the product people will go, well, ask the researchers, and the researchers will have kind of moved on to something else and have forgotten all about it. So having those interdisciplinary team, the kind of small team sport, is just as relevant to doing research and strategy work as it is to building fast-moving products. So
Lizzie asked a good question, Lizzie James. Can you give us an example of how we'd use job to be done as someone who just started a role with 11FS? What would be the approach and process? Because that is a good question. When you're new coming into, it could be 11FS, could be, JP Morgan Chase, it doesn't matter. What's the best way for them when they're new to the process to actually learn?
Just do it.
Amen.
Diving in. Yeah, absolutely.
Best time to start is right now, right? Best time to plant a tree was yesterday. Best time to start is now.
The first thing to do is just get speaking to customers.
Yeah.
If you do a few interviews that don't work, doesn't matter. You'll learn from it and you'll get better at it. But feeling comfortable with talking to customers is the number one skill in doing any kind of research, even let alone jobs to be done.
So Derek Sutton from Autobooks, who was on like 2 weeks ago, asked a really good question. I love Derek. How does understanding the job impact how you market to customers? Ooh, Ryan, here we go.
Yeah, good one. Jobs to be done it comes from marketing. We go back to what we're talking about with Clayton Christensen and the milkshakes and the Snickers bar examples. These are products that exist. They're just being sold in different ways. And they're being sold in different ways because the jobs to be done research is throwing up new use cases for how consumers are using that product. As I said just a moment ago in the previous question, what we find is that you kind of put a product out there and customers will use it in different ways than what you anticipated. And if you can start to understand why people are using it in those ways and what outcomes they're striving for when they're using it for those reasons, then you can understand how to market your product more effectively. And so
that's a good answer. That's a really good answer, Ryan. To take it full circle, and then we're going to jump into Springsteen because I teased everybody with that. At the beginning of this, we talked about milkshakes and the work that Clayton Christensen did with McDonald's on that. McDonald's, believe it or not, is just a treasure trove of great examples on product development, on marketing, everything else. If you get a chance, go out and read the Redbox story. So if y'all remember the Redbox, where you can go and rent movies out of that. That actually is another McDonald's creation, using kind of the jobs to be done approach. And by the way, failing. So the initial rollout of this didn't work because it was actually focused on consumer goods like milk and bread and a vending machine you would buy. But Redbox launched out of that, and McDonald's ended up selling it for like $768 million to Coinstar a few years later. But what's funny is one of the guys behind that was Mark Jameson, who's now the head of innovation at Visa, right? So again, this stuff is around. There's great examples to look for, but you got to love McDonald's for doing this. All right, Ryan, we tease Springsteen too much. What does Springsteen have to do with jobs to be done? I'll allow you to touch on that. So what are we talking about there? The boss. So
we have been running an internal project, started kind of start of this year really, and has been a little bit kind of put back by coronavirus. But we were looking at the SMB market in the US. And so we were looking at what the jobs to be done were for SMBs in financial management. And Springsteen just happened to be a name that someone threw out on our Slack channel saying, what should we call this as an internal name? And I think it's probably Jeff, who was a big Springsteen fan, put it out there, born in America, let's go for it. And so we've just been calling it Project Springsteen for a while now, and it's kind of stuck. So we've been doing this this jobs we've done research and strategy report really, and we've spoken to 12 to 15 businesses qualitatively. We spent over an hour with these businesses trying to understand them and kind of unearth their jobs to be done. We've spoken to 10 plus kind of subject matter experts in this area. So CEOs of fintechs in the US, kind of head of strategy, head of digital banking in some of the bigger, larger banks in the US as well. And then we've gone and spoke to over 1,000 small to medium-sized businesses in the US as well in a quantitative survey to start to kind of rank and prioritize some of those jobs we've done and to see where those opportunity spaces were. So the research has been really comprehensive. And we finished this literally just before coronavirus took hold in the West. And so we have a beautifully formed piece of insight that is crystallized in time almost just before the world changed. But it's great because now we can see where the opportunity spaces were from the jobs to be done perspective, and where we would start to focus or advise companies to focus their product innovation on pre-coronavirus. We've been tracking how coronavirus is affecting consumers and businesses around the world at 11FS in my team. And we've created a framework as well for understanding how we go through different phases from this kind of fear and anxiety to the next stage, which is basically readjustment and preparing for effectively what's going to be a deep recession. And then this kind of new world that will emerge afterwards. And so we can see how these jobs we do will change throughout this crisis. At the minute, everything's up in the air and people are in survival mode. But as things start to steady a little bit and we come out of the coronavirus, we'll start to see new patterns emerge, new behaviors, new motivations, new outcomes that will exist. And we'll do a kind of post-crisis new normal reports as well to see how things have shifted. So we've got almost the perfect timing with the research that we've done.
So, folks, we've got a million links that we'll put out there. So what Ryan's talking about, and I'll actually put it out there today. We did Ryan and his team did a jobs to be done analysis around PFM, which so personal financial management, which I would say 2 months ago in the US was a topic no one wanted to touch on. And now I would say it's a topic everybody wants to touch on. It's amazing how timing is everything. And suddenly there's this huge demand to look at this. For all of you that have been throwing questions on, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but I guarantee you we won't ignore them. We'll get back to the questions, and Ryan and I will give you our answers on those. Look for these links on here on LinkedIn, or the answers on LinkedIn. We'll also push them out on Twitter. But thank you all so much for engaging. Ryan, where's the best place for folks to learn more about you?
I'm on Twitter at Ryan Garner, and I'm on LinkedIn as well.
And again, I'm just going to flat out say it. Reach out to them. One thing I love about Jobs to be Done and those that are in this space is, God, there's a million Slack channels out there that folks are in a million Slack groups. The people will talk to you. As far as me, at Sam Mall, any question you ask for me around Jobs to be Done, I'm going to punt to Ryan. That's not true. That's not true. I'll answer those. I'll answer them. Tomorrow, we're going to be joined by Dave Berger. He's the co-founder and CEO of QNexus. Flat out one of the best solutions in the U.S., in my opinion, when it comes to real-time contextual engagement for your customers. Let someone know if you'd like to, who you'd like to see to have on the show. Ping us the names. We'd love to get them on. Everybody, thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate it. We love having this community together. Thank you for the questions. Ryan, thanks for jumping in from the UK. And everybody else, we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you.